Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And we're back, and this is for anybody that is looking to change jobs, maybe accelerate their career position, want to move up the ladder somehow. And for that, there's a thing called LinkedIn, which you should be harnessing the power of. And some of us might jump in there, or maybe you're on it already, but wonder, am I doing this right? Well, here's a guy that does it right. And he's actually wrote the book literally about it. Joe Frankie III is a mentor, coach, and an author. And he's with us again today. Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Hey, man, it's going great.
Good to have you with us. Yeah, I've learned so much on the LinkedIn side of things. And a lot of people are just afraid to grab the spotlight. I've spoken with a lot of people that know they should be on LinkedIn, but very cautiously approach it because A, they don't want to make a mistake. I don't really know how you could make such a mistake on LinkedIn. You're just talking about yourself or being in the spotlight. Why do you think that is?
I think it goes back to, what your grandmother told you, just keep your mouth shut, listen, and that kind of stuff. And, that's pretty good guidance in a way. But in today's world, we're not even in the office for a lot of us. Then the only way that you're going to be seen is with what you have populated on LinkedIn. And the bottom line up front is, in today's world, you're in a noun and verb war with your peers on LinkedIn. So if you're world class, you're good, and nobody knows that, it's not going to work for you.
It's there to get the word out about you and show you. My analogy is you're going to a networking event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you just want to meet people and talk, have a dialogue with people. Picture it this way: Facebook for business. If anybody hasn't jumped in, kind of what it's like.
It really kind of is the Facebook for business, and it's got rules, which I kind of like, and it's gotten so big, it's kind of hard for them to administer, those rules, because 2 people every second are coming onto LinkedIn. So that's every 13 days, that's another 1 million people. So, I mean, they built it, and as evidenced by the numbers, they are coming.
Without a doubt. And what's interesting too, is if you do a search on somebody and you have your profile fairly well optimized, it's another link for you that comes up. So maybe you have a website for your business. Maybe you are the business, or maybe you just have a website for yourself. When somebody does a search, even if they're searching for you, LinkedIn invariably is going to come up. So it's just one more, call it business card on the counter that somebody sees. And another way to increase your credibility too, because perception is everything. So, wow, I just Googled Joe. I heard about this guy. I'm like, wow, look at all these listings, these links. He's got a website. He's this, he's that. He's on LinkedIn and onward.
Oh, and by the way, he did a podcast with Steve Harvey.
Harper.
I'm sorry.
Everybody does that. Everybody all the time. Yeah. But didn't you tell me before that you really don't have a website? Like you don't even, focus is.
Well, I ended up having to have a website, and it was a requirement of Morgan James Publishing for them to publish our book.
Gotcha.
Because any questions that came to them, they wanted, a place to divert to kind of forever, right? Yeah. Or changes on this or changes on that. And so I was required to get a website. And so, naturally, I didn't know too much about it, so I got a lot of help. But the reason I lay that out is all of my business and who I am, what I do, what I've done, was on the LinkedIn profile. And so I've never really done any advertising. And so I've ended up coaching people in 13 different countries. So they either found me organically through a search on LinkedIn or by word of mouth from other people.
Let's go back to what you just said. The fact that you needed a website so you could publish a book about LinkedIn. Well, you needed it. The publisher required it. So put that to the side for a second. Yeah. But people have found you for your business through LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, with that, you get a lot of people that want to, sell you or talk to you or something like that. I mean, it's a business platform. So there's people out there trying to do business on it. And we can talk about a way that a lot of people are using it for business is like using a sword for heart surgery. You can do it, but the patient probably doesn't survive.
I'm going to remember that, by the way.
So what happens is, I mean, if you learn how to deftly use LinkedIn, you can accomplish your objectives, much like a surgeon using a scalpel.
Gotcha.
But a lot of people just don't take the time to do it and everything like that. For example, LinkedIn is also an excellent business intelligence platform. If you want to find out something, if you run enough searches or want to find something, just, hey, tailor your searches and what have you. For example, I have a client in a metropolitan place. He's got 3 jobs that he's looking at, right? Knows the position, line number of these 3 different companies. And that's what he wants to do in the next 18 months. So here's a planner, those are the nice ones to deal with because, they got time, they're thinking through stuff. So what we're doing is we've organized who all the people are in those companies that are probably supervisors of that position. And so he's got about 15 people in 3 different companies. It's his mission to virtually connect with them on LinkedIn, then go have coffee with them, then go have lunch with them and develop a relationship. Because if you have a relationship, people know who you are, then your chance when that opportunity comes open and you're available and qualified, right? Then you got a much better chance of getting that seat than somebody that nobody knows.
Without a doubt. And goes back to networking. That works the same exact way.
Yeah, it's using a networking tool, to get you one layer in, the next layer in, the next layer in.
How about we talk about some of the things to optimize your profile? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people, maybe you're on LinkedIn and you wonder if you're doing it right, or you haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. You should, and then you wonder.
Yeah, so
I don't want to look bad. That's what it is.
LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to tell story after story after story about yourself. It's, well, what kind of story should I put out there? And I always tell them, hey, we're looking for problem solvers. And the more stories you tell about working with a group of people, yourself, and solving a problem. And the definition of solving a problem is increase in efficiency, reduction of man hours, reduce costs, increase profit, EBITDA, all those kind of things. In other words, you went at that effort, just because you didn't think, well, this is cool, I think I want to do that. There was some net desire to achieve, and you either did or you didn't, or you came close to doing it, or what have you. And LinkedIn gives you all those places to tell those stories with qualitative and quantitative metrics. So the difference between people at our level, right? Hey, we're all great guys. We're all over 40, right? But what differentiates us is the metrics. And so if you can't tell those metrics, then you're just another good guy, right? So I'm an executive recruiter as well. And so, if you can't measure your production, then, I'm going to the next guy or gal.
And I love you just mentioned the word story. Your profile is your story. It doesn't have to look or feel like a traditional resume with all those, right? A lot of people think I have to use those words: strategic, passionate, specialized, leadership. Not saying that you can't have those words in there, but to your point, you got to demonstrate as well.
Right. So, like I frequent question, who's going to read that stuff? And I said, 99 out of 100 people are not. But the one person that you catch the eye on and they start spending time on your profile, you want to feed that person until they choke. Because if they're going to that depth, they're looking for somebody to solve a problem and they want to know whether, you got it. And the more you can tell a story about whether you got it, the closer you get to actually
Getting it.
having some sort of interface,
Right.
And then it's up to you after that.
What about asking for or requesting recommendations? It's endorsements are so incredibly powerful. Is there any rule of thumb for that?
Yeah. So a lot of people come to me and think, okay, I just need it from my boss. I said, no, a recommendation from your peer, a recommendation from somebody that worked directly for you. It's really that person's ability to tell a story about what you bring to the table. And then secondly, I always tell people, go look at your recommendations. I said, who you are is what these people say, because that's what they see. That's your mirror. Because a lot of people will say, well, I don't think I do that. Well, hey, Susie, Bob, and Jill said, you're AJ squared away in this area, and that you helped them and you developed them and all that kind of stuff. So you have the capability of coaching, mentoring, developing. So, whether you like it or not, you're a leader, because these people say you're a leader, so recommendations are extremely helpful. And I, as an executive recruiter anymore, somebody says, Joe, here's my references. And I said, I don't need any of your references. He said, but Joe, these, I spent some time, I got my references. I said, look, I'm going to the recommendations on your profile. And they said, well, but I have these references. And I said, well, if they're not willing to put it in public space, I'm going to take something in the public, because, that person's reputation's on the line as far as I'm concerned.
Really, really good point right there. And a lot of times when, excuse me, somebody lines up references, they're cherry picked, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that person will be available if the phone rings. But like to your point, Joe, when it's out there and it's public, somebody is putting their reputation on the line to endorse or recommend somebody else, and it's more genuine that way.
Yeah, I mean, in a couple of cases, I'll call them up. I can find them on LinkedIn. I'll say, hey, you have time for a 3-minute call? Hey, I'm Joe Frankie. I'm working on an executive assignment. You gave a recommendation to Billy Bob. Really, what wasn't said in this, I mean, what kind of result was on this project? So it's like another level, and that just helps me go back to the client, give more information, to advance that person to the next stage.
How about some other tips that come to mind to help somebody either start or optimize their LinkedIn profile?
Okay. Hey, you have your profile photo. Okay. That is like number one, so if, how would you show up at an interview in your profession? In your profession as a podcast host, there's a definition of how you show up for an interview. And that's what kind of profile picture needs to be on LinkedIn, so that when somebody sees you for the first time, there's no delta between, hey, this is what's on my profile, and that shot was taken 10 years ago. So now you have a negative first impression. So what you want to create is a positive virtual first impression. So the profile photo is extremely valuable. It needs to be an upper headshot, and people need to be able to see your eyes. If somebody can't see your eyes, you can't be trusted. And we're getting back into subconscious stuff now, but I mean,
it's powerful. It's what motivates and drives all of us. So these are, even the language you use, we can go even layers deeper in terms of how you phrase things, but we don't need to go there. We're skimming the surface here. But yeah, absolutely. And even cover photo, I'm a proponent of, because I have a marketing background, to make sure that everything is cohesive. So if you're using a picture in LinkedIn, make sure that picture, or one that's of similar quality and you're wearing the same similar clothes, is someplace else. So when somebody finds you, they're going to have that positive feel.
Yeah. So like if you find me, you're going to find my LinkedIn profile, picture. It's the same one on all social media. So there won't be any questions whether, that's me or not.
Right, right.
I try to control that as best I can. The other thing is you have the ability to have a background photo. Okay. So in your particular case, you're in the podcast, marketing business, so that studio look, that I'm looking at right now, would be great. So if you're a project manager, then hey, some projects are going on in that background photo. So what you want to do is link the immediate reader's mind. Hey, I'm looking at a project manager. Okay, I'm looking at a financial person. I'm looking at, so that there's no delta. And then your headline is 220 characters right underneath your name. And what is it that you bring to the table? Not that you're, hey, I'm a world-class podcast host for, Podcast Business Network. No, I mean, what do you bring to the table? We already know that you have a title and you work for PBN, but okay, what is it that you bring to the table? So like, for example, for me, the first couple of things I put on there is CEO, board member, because what I want is somebody to call and say, Joe, we'd like you to sit on this board. And oh, by the way, it's not voluntary. It's either cash or stock, got enough of the voluntary stuff.
That's where I'm making my mistake here. I'm on boards. I don't get paid, but okay, we'll talk.
And if you like it, do it. I'm on several too. But,
yeah, nonprofits. Yeah. It's and you know what? Not only does it make you feel good that you're giving back to the community, but let's talk LinkedIn. It looks good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So on your LinkedIn profile, you have your volunteer activities. So you can take credit for all those volunteer activities. You can't do that on a resume. A resume is really just kind of a black and white snapshot of who you are. And the resume answers the question of the job description. Job description, position specification, the resume answers the mail. LinkedIn profile is everything about you, including, the kitchen sink. Now, if you don't want to put that out there, that's up to you. But what I'm telling my experience is I put the kitchen sink out there, and it's funny how people contact you. Joe, I didn't know you went to American Legion Boys State. Well, yeah, I did in high school. Well, I did too. And that starts a conversation. So that was the icebreaker.
Yep.
Okay. Then we get into, hey, Joe, can you help me with this or that? And I either can or I can't, and I refer them out.
It's almost as if you're putting stuff, to use the cliche, throwing stuff up against the wall, making it stick. And then other people may see what's on the wall and say, hey, that connects with me. And I just want to go back. And by the way, we're talking with mentor, coach, and author Joe Frankie III. He's got a website, but find him on LinkedIn. You mentioned before about your title, and so many of us get wrapped up in that it has to be an official title. I'm a CEO. I do this. But it really doesn't. As long as it tells what you do, relates to you, and maybe also in very short form, shows your results as well.
Right. So in the last part of my headline right below my name, I say, guest for radio, podcast, television. So, I'm also hunting for opportunities, but I get people call me, say, hey, will you do a short, TV bit for us? Will you, so the point is you can spend your life hunting, but why not? Why don't you let people find you? I mean, it's a 50-50 deal, right?
Absolutely. You got to put the bait out there, though.
Yeah, it's much like, you got to think about it like fishing. If you want a new job and your new job is a trout, then you better have the bait that trout like.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a question. Jeff is in Royal Palm Beach, Florida, and says, I heard that it's no longer useful to publish long articles on LinkedIn. People don't read it and it's not going to help. Is that true?
I think you have to be good at summarizing an article. And what happens is what people are going to see is a summary of the article, and then you can kind of have a link to the full article. And that way, the people that want to go to the full article, you just have that link that they hit with their cursor and away they go.
So are you saying, Joe, that the article would be located on LinkedIn or someplace else and you're linking to it?
So what happens is you can post on LinkedIn an article, or you can see somebody else posted something and kind of add to it, and I do that a lot. And I have my volunteer things, the West Point Society of Greater Houston, that, I post content on there. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we did, but most of that is short stuff. And then if I want them to, if they want to see more about this, I'll put it in, one of those short curtailed things, and there'll be a hot link or a hyperlink, and go to the full article. So I think that's the way most people are handling that. And that's a pretty good way, because, hey, this is a short story, and if you want the rest of the story, click here.
And a lot of us struggle with the content. So if you don't have anything at this moment that is super relevant and that you're comfortable with, then maybe write an article or a story, whatever it is, as long as it's well written. So and I've done it before, and I've taken probably a little too much time to make sure it's good, because you're putting a link out there for somebody to go to it, and now you're showcasing.
It's out there forever.
It's out there forever. And then there's that. Yeah. So take the extra time, but you know what? Here's another way. And by the way, let's say you do have a website. Well, you write a blog on your website. There's content for you on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with repurposing, content across either platforms or different strings in LinkedIn, as long as it makes sense.
Yeah. And it reflects you.
Right.
I'll share something with you, because I just got a flash of a story that I wrote about 3 years ago. And I was in Florida, and I went to the place that's famous for sponge fishermen. And I met this guy, and he was amazing that this is his life and his dedication to it, and the principles of hard work and passion that came out of it. And I wrote a story about him, and quite a few people saw it. I had a picture of him up there, and he dives down, gets sponges at the bottom of the ocean floor, brings them up, and that's how we get sponges. But just his story, it motivated me, and I hoped it motivated other people. But it's a random thing, but you never know, what might resonate with people.
Yeah. I mean, the more unique, the better.
Yeah.
Not in all cases, but I mean, I really, just like you described a unique thing that you probably didn't know anything about before you talked to this guy.
Absolutely.
And you found it fascinating.
But and it wasn't just a guy who's fishing for sponges. The lesson there was that the work that he puts in, how he does his job, and the passion that I've never seen anything like that ever. And, we may minimize it and say, man, he's just jumping in the water and getting sponges, but where will we get sponges from? He's important to a lot of us, but you never know what's going to resonate in terms of content. And you could see something in a store and take a picture and pop it up there with the right kind of direction. I guess the bottom line is, look at people who you admire on LinkedIn. What are they doing?
Right. And, in a lot of those that are very successful, I mean, they've got some smart marketing people, behind them. So just when you see somebody, don't ever think, it's a one-man team.
That's a really good point. If you're looking at somebody that's very elevated, they might have somebody doing it for them, but it's probably being done right, and there's still something you can take away from it.
Yeah. I mean, my grandfather always said, find the expert and study him.
100%. It's not like you're copying, you're inspired by
No.
the person, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody has questions, they want to work with you, even if somebody's listening and they're searching for staff or employee, because that's another aspect of what you do, they can reach out to you.
Sure. I'm out on LinkedIn as Joe Frankie with an IE and then triple I behind that. That's on the URL, Joe Frankie III. And if you want to see the content that I have, you can just take Joe Frankie III and Google. There's 3 pages there of different kinds of podcasts, film, different ideas, different aspects on LinkedIn, recruiting,
Sure. Yeah. I want you to say one final thing here. If you could repeat the business you've gotten from LinkedIn. You said it before, mind-boggling.
Oh, okay. The business I've gotten from LinkedIn. Yeah. So I've ended up coaching people in 13 different countries. And the thing that I always sum up with people, everybody say, well, I don't know if I want to put that out there. And I always go back to what Dizzy Dean said. And he said, it ain't bragging if you done
it. Completely true. And the facts are there. The facts speak for themselves. And
yeah, that's why the metrics and the qualitative descriptors are so important.
Joe, always a pleasure talking with you. And it's almost weird not to give out your website. Do we want to, or just go to LinkedIn?
You can go to LinkedIn, but it's JFIII Associates altogether.com. JFIII Associates.com.
Pleasure talking with you. Thanks for all the insight. And I really got to optimize my profile. I'm saying it right here. I got to get it done sometime soon. All right, we'll catch up.
Sure.
Thanks again, Joe.
Oh, man. Good to see you.
You too. I appreciate it. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world. This is the podcast.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.